Close your eyes for a second and picture the world as a live camera feed. That is how most of us assume perception works. Light comes in, sound comes in, and the brain records it. But neuroscience suggests something far stranger. You are not passively observing reality. You are actively generating it. What feels like a stable, solid world out there is actually a controlled construction happening inside your skull, updated moment by moment. Researchers call this process a controlled hallucination. The idea sounds extreme, but it is grounded in brain science. When you dream at night, your brain creates a fully immersive world without any external input. When you are awake, the same machinery is running, only now it is constrained by sensory signals. The difference between dreaming and waking is not that one is real and the other is fake. It is that waking hallucinations are continuously corrected by incoming data. Consider your blind spot. There is a literal hole in your visual field where the optic nerve exits the retina, no photoreceptors, no data, yet you never see a floating black circle in your vision. Your brain quietly fills it in, seamlessly, borrowing patterns from the surrounding environment. The same thing happens with auditory illusions, where you swear you hear a word that was never spoken because your brain predicted it. In both cases, your experience feels complete, even though parts of it were fabricated. This realization creates a subtle psychological tension. We trust our senses because they feel immediate and undeniable. The gap between what we experience and what physically exists is deeply uncomfortable. If your perception is partially constructed, then certainty becomes fragile. The solid ground of "I saw it with my own eyes" starts to wobble, and that wobble challenges your sense of control and objectivity. Here is the central claim. The reality you are experiencing right now is a neurochemical simulation. It is not designed to give you perfect truth. It is optimized for survival. Your brain evolved to keep you alive long enough to reproduce, not to provide a high-resolution, unbiased model of the universe. What you call reality is the brain's best guess, tuned for usefulness, not accuracy. If your brain is constantly predicting and editing reality, then the most powerful skill you can develop is the ability to notice that process in real time. This capacity is called metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. Neuroscientifically, it is closely linked to the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for planning, reflection, and impulse control. When this area is active, you are not just inside the simulation. You are observing how it is being built. Metacognition allows you to pause between stimulus and reaction. Instead of instantly defending a belief or acting on an emotion, you can ask a different question. What assumption was I making just now? That small gap creates space for updating your internal model rather than automatically protecting it. It shifts you from being a passive character in the narrative to becoming an active editor of it. One practical way to strengthen this skill is to intentionally create small prediction errors. Seek out well-argued perspectives that challenge your views, change routines that feel automatic. Travel different routes, talk to people outside your usual circle, question conclusions you normally take for granted. These mild disruptions force the brain to remain flexible. They keep neural pathways adaptable instead of rigid and overconfident. Another step is learning to separate raw awareness from the non-stop commentary generated by your default mode network. The voice in your head that labels, judges, and explains is not the same as the deeper capacity to observe. Practices like mindfulness train you to notice thoughts as events in the mind rather than as unquestionable truths. Over time, this reduces the grip of biased narratives and strengthens cognitive flexibility. There is a profound freedom in accepting that your perceived reality is always a draft, never the final version. Epistemic humility does not mean giving up on truth. It means recognizing that your model of the world is low resolution and temporary. When you understand that your experience is a constructed simulation optimized for survival, you gain leverage. You cannot escape the illusion, but you can take responsibility for how it is shaped. That is where genuine agency begins. Imagine two co-workers sitting in the same meeting. The manager gives brief feedback, neutral in tone. One person leaves feeling motivated, hearing opportunity for growth. The other walks out convinced they were criticized and undervalued. The words were identical, the room was the same. But their brains ran different predictive models, shaped by past praise, past rejection and personal insecurities. Each nervous system constructed a version of the event that felt completely real and emotionally justified. This is where motivated reasoning enters the picture. When new information threatens your internal model of the world, your brain experiences a spike in prediction error. Updating a deeply held belief is metabolically expensive. It requires reorganizing networks of associations, memories, and expectations. So instead, the brain often chooses the cheaper option. It bends the new data to fit the old story. What feels like logical argument is often a biological defense of an existing simulation. Ideological echo chambers can be understood through the same lens. Surrounding yourself with people who agree with you reduces prediction errors. It creates a steady stream of confirming signals that stabilize your internal model. This does not just feel comforting on a social level. It feels neurologically efficient. Certainty lowers cognitive strain. In contrast, constant exposure to opposing views forces repeated updates, which the brain instinctively resists. Because of this, conflict between individuals or groups is rarely a clean debate about facts. It is a collision between incompatible predictive worlds. Each side is defending a model that feels self-evident and morally grounded. When someone challenges that model, the threat is not just intellectual, it is biological. The nervous system reacts as if something fundamental is under attack, because at a neural level, it is. Even your emotions follow this pattern. We tend to believe that events directly cause our feelings, but often, emotions arise when reality fails to match hidden expectations. Anger, anxiety, disappointment, they are signals that the world did not unfold the way your brain predicted it would. The external trigger matters, but the intensity of the reaction is shaped by the private simulation running underneath awareness. Modern neuroscience describes this system through something called predictive coding theory. According to this framework, the brain is not primarily a reactive organ, it is a prediction machine. The cortex constantly generates top-down models about what is likely to happen next, then sends those predictions down the neural hierarchy towards sensory regions. Incoming signals from your eyes and ears travel upward to meet these expectations, and perception emerges from the negotiation between the two. What is striking is the anatomical imbalance. There are significantly more neural pathways carrying predictions downward than pathways carrying raw sensory data upward. In other words, your expectations have more bandwidth than your senses. This structure suggests that perception is driven more by what the brain expects to see than by what is actually out there. Sensory input acts less like a creator of experience and more like an editor, correcting the brain's draft. When reality does not match the prediction, the brain registers what scientists call a prediction error. This is the moment of surprise, the glitch in the simulation. The brain then has two basic options. It can update its internal model to better reflect the new information, or it can downplay and reinterpret the incoming data to preserve the old model. Both strategies reduce the error signal, but only one leads to genuine learning. Dopamine plays a central role in this process. When an outcome is better than expected, dopamine spikes, reinforcing the neural pathways that produce the successful prediction. When the outcome is worse than expected, dopamine levels dip, creating the feeling we label as disappointment. These chemical shifts are not just emotions. They are teaching signals, guiding the brain to fine-tune its future simulations. In this way, every surprise becomes a potential update to your internal reality. This predictive machinery is closely tied to the default mode network, a set of brain regions active when you are not focused on the outside world. The DMN generates an ongoing narrative about who you are, what your past means, and what your future might look like. It stitches together memories, goals, and beliefs into a coherent self-concept. That sense of being a stable observer inside your head is itself part of the simulation, a central character created to anchor the story your brain keeps telling. Your brain weighs about 3 pounds. It makes up only around 2% of your body weight, yet it consumes close to 20% of your total energy. That is an enormous metabolic cost. From an evolutionary standpoint, this organ cannot afford to analyze every pixel of visual data or every vibration of sound from scratch in real time. If it tried, you would freeze in place, overwhelmed by raw input. Efficiency is not optional, it is survival. To solve this problem, The brain relies on pattern matching. It does not wait for complete information before forming a perception. Instead, it preloads expectations based on past experience and then uses incoming sensory signals to confirm or slightly adjust those expectations. In many cases, your conscious awareness is the final draft of a prediction that was made milliseconds earlier. By the time you think you are seeing something, your brain has already filled in most of the blanks. This creates a powerful trade-off between speed and accuracy. In ancestral environments, a fast guess that a rustle in the grass was a predator could save your life, even if you were wrong half the time. A slow, perfectly accurate analysis might get you eaten. Natural selection favored brains that jump to conclusions quickly and revise later if necessary. Being slightly wrong but fast was statistically safer than being perfectly right but slow. What we call cognitive biases are not random flaws in an otherwise rational system. They are shortcuts built into this predictive architecture. Confirmation bias, availability bias, and snap judgments are all ways the brain conserves energy and maintains a stable model of the world. These mechanisms allow you to function smoothly most of the time. They are features of an efficient brain, not evidence of low intelligence or personal weakness. Now consider something more personal. Your past experiences, your traumas, your successes, your deeply held beliefs, all of them shape the predictions your brain makes today. They act as invisible filters, altering how sensory data is interpreted before you are even aware of it. Two people can stand in the same room and, at a neural level, be rendering two different realities. Your history is not just a memory archive. It is an active force sculpting the world you think you see.